Hi, this is Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you to our special call on the International Living Facebook page this Saturday afternoon. Today, we're going to be looking at occupations you wouldn't necessarily think that you could take abroad. And I've got a few examples to go through, three to be exact, and show you a little bit about how our thinking process works when we begin to work with a person that wants to cultivate a freelance income, when they want to develop that portable income that can travel with them anywhere they go. When they come into one of our programs, this is basically where we start. Is we start looking at we look at their occupation, of course, and the number one question we get is, gee, I don't know if there's anything I could do online. I've never really saw myself as an online person. I don't write programs, I don't build websites, that kind of thing. And what we have developed over the 14 years that we've been doing this is a diagnostic questionnaire that helps us, sort of pin down the areas that person can work in. And what I'm going to do is go through some of those right now and show you those. Let me see if I can get this popped up here. Well, it says I have no slides. Hold on a second. Let's second. I think we can. Oops. All right. Well, give me just a minute to do that. Let's see. Share screen. There we go. Okay. And here we go. That's it. So this is a great example, somebody who's a nurse. And the thing we always like to emphasize is that you're not your occupation. And this is the challenge that we have with many baby boomers and people that are 50 plus. They feel like I'm my occupation. They've lived in it so long, they can't hardly understand. They can't see this online world as something that could take pieces of what they know how to do. And so this woman here is a perfect example. She's a nurse. And like many nurses or medical professionals, over her career, she had exposure to sort of different specialties. First of all, she was trained in anatomy. She was trained in giving medications and what different kinds of medications were and how they interact. And she also had experience in pain management and critical care, and then also neonatal, which is, taking care of newborns, that kind of thing, that have special needs at that point. And so those are what we would call her domains of knowledge. Those are the pieces that she had. And she, when we first started talking, thought about herself as, well, I'm a nurse, I'm a nurse, I'm this occupation. And as I asked her about what she did in her early years, is what she's doing now the same thing she was doing when she started? And of course the answer was no. And I said, well, tell me about that. What did you do just before you did this? And then what did you do just before you did that? And when you go through this process and you sit down with a notepad and paper, you're going to get a whole bunch of things that you didn't immediately recall. And these are actually terms, search terms, that you can use when you go in and look for jobs in online networks. Recently, I saw a job where somebody wanted to be tutored in anatomy. They were a medical student and they were working, studying through certain parts of anatomy, and they wanted to work with a tutor that could work with them in this one particular area because they were struggling to get it. So that is an example of how you can take that specific piece of knowledge, that hunk of knowledge, and turn it into online work. Now, the challenge on these networks is they do have bunches and bunches of jobs. And so hundreds of thousands in one network alone that I looked at just this morning. And so what we want to do is we really want to narrow those down to the jobs that are perfect for you. And those jobs get very specific. And one of the things that we work with are keywords and keyword phrases. So what we're doing is taking that that list of skills they have. Thanks, Edward, for that like. Always appreciate the likes. We take their domains of knowledge and match them up with the skills they might have. So let me give you an example. There's 300,000 jobs on this network. If I go in and say, I'm looking for somebody who is a nurse or has been, a nurse in the past, and that might narrow it down to say $15,000 people. And then if we say I'm looking for a nurse that has experience in neonatal, so that narrows it down much further, maybe to a few thousand. And I'm looking for a nurse that has expertise using PowerPoint. So if this was a nurse and I just talked with one recently about her use of PowerPoint, and she used it every so often to do training and give examples of things and that kind of thing. And so they're looking for that person that knows how to use PowerPoint, and maybe even in addition to that knows something about scuba diving. So that was a hobby of hers, and she started out as a scuba diver and worked her way up to instructor and that kind of thing. So lots of different skill sets narrow the focus of those jobs. But when she gets down to that narrow focus of jobs, she has exactly the experience that person wants, that freelance buyer wants. And that's the thing that we really like to communicate to people, is that they are, I find myself saying a lot of times, you're more than you think you are. You have all these dimensions to your nursing career, and then you have all these dimensions to your skill set, and then you have all these dimensions to your fundraising and charitable activities and that kind of thing. And you love to scuba dive, and first of all, a lot about scuba and diving and that kind of thing, but you probably know a lot about if we went on about ocean habitats and that kind of thing, that would be very useful. She has even many more layers of knowledge that can be useful on these networks. And thanks for your kind words, Jessica. And yes, as I was preparing for this afternoon, I felt like, what is the one question that we get the most, and that kind of thing. The For that, let's see. And Jessica has a question. And I tuned in late. Would you please repeat the name of the website you were mentioning that lists the needs? Well, I don't know of any one website that lists all the needs, but the ones, there's Upwork.com is one of them. Freelancer.com. You can go in and set this up, and you can see list of needs in there. You can just go to Google and do a general search on skills needed or skills in demand for online freelancing. But the thing you're going to run into is that a lot of these sites don't look at this quite the way we do. They're looking for programmers, they're looking for administrative assistants, they're looking for engineers, that kind of thing. And they go at it a different way. And what we found with people 50 and over is that you really want to combine these different things in order to get to those things that are just right for you. And I mean, this is in a way our secret sauce. And so that's most people don't put it together quite this way, but we know for baby boomers, let's look at the whole group of freelancers that are out there. I mean, you basically have people from about 20 to in their 70s and 80s doing this kind of work. About 20 to 25% of people doing this kind of work online are over 50. So they're in that age group. And because the people in the earlier part, say in their 20s and 30s, are uh, they're very short, relatively speaking, on experience. If you're 65, you got a couple 3 decades of experience doing things in a certain industry and that kind of thing, and that is desirable to a group of people. If you don't have uh, that group, if you're older, you have all that experience and wisdom, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday. Is that wisdom is what is really valuable, particularly as we come out of what we've been through for the last 2 years, because every business, every nonprofit, every government agency basically has to reinvent itself in order to put together their go forward plans. So lots of need to do that, and I think it's actually a very bright horizon for people that are 50 plus, because that experience is now going to play a bigger role. When I interview freelance buyers, they're always telling me that the thing they're looking for in freelancers is somebody that has perspective, because by its nature, you might be brought in on a freelance team to do a certain tiny, narrow part of a job. But by the time you get to having done a few jobs for that person, they want to bring you in more actively on uh, more greater aspects of the job. Once they learn what your total skill set, in fact, this is one of the mistakes a lot of new freelancers make, is they get so excited they get a job, is they tell their freelance buyer, hey, there's lots of things I can do for you. What else do you need? I can do this, I can do that. And really, the freelance buyer doesn't want to hear that. What they want to do is they want to see you do good work on that very first job. And once you've done that, that's the time to have the conversation about what are the things that you're working on, and that kind of thing. And looks like David has been to Saudi Arabia. I know a lot of people have come through our programs have been out of the oil and gas business, and they have spent time in Saudi Arabia and just rave about it. And Saudi Arabia and living in a country internationally is another domain of knowledge. That's very valuable information. Let's say this woman had a domain of knowledge of the Middle East, for example, and she might know how Americans traveling in the Middle East can best find health care. What do you do? Who do you contact if you only speak English? That kind of thing. And if she were in the business of writing articles or that kind of thing, which she might be able to do, maybe has never done before, but it looks like she has a lot of communication and team training in her background. And so she would be sort of teed up to teach that sort of thing. All right, let's take. So here's another example. This individual is a government scientist in his career. He knows a lot about farm issues. He knows about safety issues. He knows about the cycle of livestock, soil conservation. He also has some knowledge about the vitamin industry. He's an avid paddle boarder, and he enjoys fishing. So these are all domains of knowledge that he has. And I'd like you to think about one domain of knowledge that you have and type it in the chat window. Just think about that. It might be something from your career. It might be something from your volunteer life. It might be something from your hobbies and interest, your recreational things that you like to do. And here's a good example from Maria. I'm very proficient at caring for animals uh, in a veterinary, I guess, a veterinarian practice. My husband and I want to retire to Spain, and I would have those skill. Would I uh, have skills to use there? Well, this brings up exactly the point: is you can't move to any country and start working. I mean, immigration prevents you from doing that. When you go into the country, when you retire, countries are happy to have you come there and retire. On the other hand, if you were want to work there, they have a full-time job making sure that you're not taking away that kind of job from a local citizen, one of their citizens. And so that would be you wouldn't be able to do that, but what you could do is you could go online and you could work through these global networks online, and you could give advice about caring for animals. If you knew how to do proofreading, you could proofread articles on caring for animals. If you knew how to make PowerPoints, you could make PowerPoints about caring for animals. If you knew how to prescribe or treat animals, uh, there's lots of different uh, things that you could do in that regard, but you can't go physically work in the country, and that's why this kind of stuff is so interesting. And so Marcia says she's got presentation skills. So this is something, an interesting thing that I've noticed over the last 14 years I've been doing this is many generations below the 50 plus do not know how to use PowerPoint or any presentation tool. They just didn't learn it. And I know that when we were coming up, it was just every time Microsoft had a new version, you had to go to training because it was used all over the place. So Jessica has great experience acting, directing, sales and sales training. And sales and sales training are two specific skills on here that are really hot on these networks right now, because organizations that had what are called field sales forces, that means people actually went out and saw customers and that kind of thing, that they're not doing that so much anymore. They're going more to almost a Zoom call methodology. So that represents a new way of selling. But I'm sure that Jessica has years of experience doing sales training and is in a good position to adapt the kind of sales training that she's learned to what that company needs now. She certainly has a lot more likelihood of doing that than somebody that's never done sales training. And so that's the idea here, is you take that and it's interesting. The sales has a little bit of acting in it and a little bit of directing in it. So you're able to really even bring those skills into this kind of work. So Jason has 2 US patents. That's very cool. Having a patent is a wonderful thing. That's the original way to earn with your intellectual property. So the field that those patents are in represent a domain of knowledge. The process of applying for a patent represents a domain of knowledge. And Jason may have taken those patents and licensed them. And in that case, he has another domain of knowledge about how to get your money out of your patent. I mean, you can have a patent, but unless somebody licenses it or it comes to market in one way or another, it's not returning an income to you. So those are all areas that could work out very good. And here we have Joseph was an ACE certified professional trainer on these various networks that I mentioned. You'll go on there and you'll look up personal trainer, professional fitness trainer, different keywords and keyword phrases, and you will see people that are looking to work with a trainer online. They could be anywhere in the world. They might be on vacation or on an expat assignment where they're in a country for 6 months or a year, and they feel compelled to stay fit and they want to work with somebody from around the world. or it might be a fitness page somewhere out there where they're looking for somebody to read over their articles before they post them to make sure they don't make an embarrassing mistake or suggest something in training that might be dangerous or difficult. And let's see, we've got John Lowitz, who's um, an optician, so this is an area again where you're not going to go be a practicing optician in a foreign country, and if you want to do a portable income thing where you might go spend a month in this country and 2 months in that country. I know a lot of people that are now planning to get back to doing that kind of thing. They were doing that before the lockdown occurred. They're going to get back to doing it again. And you can't practice in those countries. You'd have to take, in most cases, the medical boards or whatever certification is required in that country, and you have to take it in that country's language. And over the years, I've worked with several people who thought they wanted to do that, and when they got into investigating it, they realized it was a very expensive and time-consuming thing. Probably would take 2 to 3 years at least, and plus they have to learn the language, so it's just not an option. But you have lots of knowledge about health. You have knowledge about eye injuries, how to recover from eye injuries, how to avoid eye strain. I mean, that's a big one now. How many hours a day are our eyeballs glued to, a screen somewhere? We're looking 18 inches off the end of our nose, and our eyes are fixed in a position looking in that. So that's but a great potential area to work, because the jobs on these networks are all around the world. They're not in the country you're in, and that's the key thing here. You want to develop a portable income where you can separate, where you are versus where your client wants you to be, and that's the real thing that these things offer. Let's see. I work freelance in the media for American companies. Could I live overseas but still work for American companies? The short answer is yes, and I will say that we don't give immigration and tax advice. You want to, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but generally, yes, you can work for the American companies if your freelancing work comes through this project network. The whole idea is you want to maintain the locus of your business, which is, I guess a legal / accounting term, in your native country. And where you are has nothing to do, as long as you're working online, with where the center or the geo physical location is of your business. It's the same thing that a worker at General Motors, say an executive goes to their plant, one of their plants in Mexico, and he might be there answering emails and contributing to plans and building PowerPoints while he's there, but his paycheck comes from Detroit. So he's not really working in Mexico in that sense, on the work that he's doing on his laptop. So this is the idea, is that you want to separate the work that you're doing from your physical location. And as Jessica points out, this is what we call pivoting. This is a term of art in the entrepreneurial world. And when the thing that you wanted to do is no longer an option, pivoting means you figure out how to continue capitalizing on those skills and doing that in a way that is appropriate and does comply with that kind of thing. Let's see. Raquel says she's a nurse. She believes she could work remotely from overseas, either for herself or an American company while overseas. Yes, that's very possible. Some of the marketplaces that are out there are set up for just that. And I must include, this is not something we typically concentrate on. But now, post pandemic, there are a number of marketplaces that focus on employment when you're working remotely. They don't care where you live. They just want you to be available, maybe on a hotline. One of our certified coaches was talking a number of weeks ago about she set up customer service centers for major U.S. companies, and she had one where she had 6 PhDs that were on a hotline all day long talking to. It was for a large chemical company, and they were talking to users of their chemicals about which products could be combined and how they had to be handled and all that kind of thing. And those people were in the $100,000 up kind of customer service range. So if you have deep knowledge about a topic, you can do that. And there are marketplaces that do both allow you to work as a freelance. So you could work for not just American companies, but companies all around the world, no matter where you were. And you could also potentially work as an employee for one of those companies in a remote job anywhere around the world. So all of those things are options. And Karen mentions that she currently works remotely. I mean, we all, everybody got a chance to work remotely or basically over the last 2 years. Yes, and Jessica, you're right. John could write for other optometrists or help them with their strategic marketing plans. Or I remember a radiologist came into our program. He didn't want to do anything that had much to do with radiology, but he really enjoyed counseling younger radiologists about, should I continue with the hospital or should I set out with my own practice and form a group? And what's the best equipment to be buying? And how do I train myself? Or what specialty should I get certified in? And he answered all that kind of stuff. Yes, that's unfortunate, that more people don't really take advantage of that, what we would call outside the box thinking. And writing or proofreading articles for a website about optometry is great. I remember we had an emergency physician that worked for a number of years. He started out as a proofreader, and then he started writing articles about how to take care of the 10 most things that are likely to happen on a camping trip, and the 10 most likely things that are likely to happen at a little league sporting event, that kind of thing. And he turned that into sort of a cottage industry for himself. So that's a way to take your knowledge and very innovatively reapply it in a different uh, direction. And yes, Jessica, Pier 1 was a company that didn't pivot and is still grieving. There certainly were a lot of companies that had business models that didn't work, and they've gone out of business. And there are lots of other companies right now that are need this infusion of freelancer talent in order to give them the flexibilities to start up and get going again at their previous levels. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about freelancing, is that's how this really gives the business owner marketing staffing flexibility. They might let's say before the pandemic they had 12 employees, and most of America, 70% of America, is small business. It's these smaller businesses that really are the backbone of business in America. Most people think it's the big corporations, and certainly they have millions and billions of dollars of revenue, but there's hundreds of thousands of small business. And when you put what they do versus what the big corporations do, the real opportunity is in the smaller business. So, but they need the flexibility. They may not be able to hire back an employee full time, but they could hire a freelancer for 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week. And then as their business activity builds, they're able to use them more. So, yeah, that's interesting. And yes, this is this is pouring into the next generation. We thought, up until a few years ago, that our business was basically focused on baby boomers, and we've got another 8 years of baby boomers reaching age 65. So that'll go on for another 8 years. But now the youngest baby boomer is 54, and this is more of a 50 plus phenomenon. In fact, the Great Resignation. Have you heard about the Great Resignation on the news? That's a very popular topic, and to hear the news reports, to me, it sounds like these mid-career people are going back into the office and saying, "I'm not going to do that anymore." But what the research has shown, if you break down the Great Resignation numbers, 90% of the Great Resignation people are 50 and above. They're towards the end of uh, their working life, within 15 to 20 years of the end of their working life. And they're going in and saying, I've got enough skills. I know how to put these things together. This is not my first rodeo. I think I can go out and work on my own. And that's who's doing it. That's 90% of who's resigning are people that are 50 plus. Let's see. Here's an interesting one. I heard at the beginning of the pandemic, Barbados was allowing people to work remote if they stayed at least a year and earned 50K. Yes, there are over 14 uh, countries where this is a possibility. And I'll put this link in because we just talked about this in one of our calls recently. Let's see, places. Be more countries. Where digital nomads. Okay. Oh. And here is the article. Let me get the link so I can put it in the. This is 21 countries with digital nomad visas, and so an interesting thing is happening now is that some countries are being less favorable to digital nomads, and other countries are being more favorable to digital nomads. So let me. Here we go. So let me pop this in the chat window here. And this is the article that talks that through. So you see lots of good stuff out there. This whole area of digital nomads, it's kind of a gray area. And of course, a lot of digital nomads would operate on a tourist visa. They'd go stay a month in one country and then a month in another and that sort of thing. And with the lockdown, they wind up having to stay for a year and 2 years and that sort of thing. And so that was how all this pieced together. And some countries have seen it as an opportunity to treat digital nomads well. In some countries, there's a lot of sort of irritation at the digital nomad because they don't pay taxes in the country. But what they finally realized is that digital nomad typically spends $30,000 to $40,000 a year in that country, and that's wonderful for the local economy, especially if you're a country like Mexico that has a lot of beaches and that kind of thing. It's a perfect environment for the digital nomad, and also a great environment, a great benefit to the government, to the local economies, because of the money the rent and all that kind of stuff. And so that's some of the kind of things that are going on now, and countries are setting up specialized programs. I mean, this article is about 21 countries that have set up specialized programs to bring freelancers basically into their country. They're recognizing that every time they bring somebody in, even if they're working remotely, they get paid, in US dollars and it goes into the US bank account. That money is still cycling back into their local economy. So that's a pretty big deal there. So, and Paige, you're very welcome. Yes. And Karen, yes, that link is, I've shared that with a number of folks, and you really get this idea. We've seen governments do some crazy things over the last 2 years, and some of them discourage digital nomads, and others embrace them. And it's the smart ones that I think are embracing them. And it's like Bermuda now has a digital nomad program, and they're encouraging digital nomads to come work there. So lots of good stuff going on there. Let's see. Here's another example. Occupation wise, corporate marketing manager. And here's a person that some of their domains of knowledge are: they have a knowledge of retail distribution, they have a knowledge of health products, they have a knowledge of how to put together a marketing campaign, they have knowledge of how to project manage the introduction of a product, they have knowledge of the vitamin industry, and they also, as personal interest, have domains of knowledge in the area of fitness and also in the area of camping. And so, these are typically people that when I first talk to them say, gee, I don't know what I could do online. And you can take those exact terms and combine them with a skill like project management or customer service or team coordination or product launch. And you're coming up with very specialized jobs that fit your background perfectly. What most people that haven't worked on these networks don't realize yet is that the people that uh, are looking for workers, freelancers on these networks really want to combine those unique skills. If somebody goes out there and says, "Hey, I need an article on how to set your vitamins up when you're getting ready to travel, so you make sure you have all the doses and everything, and what's the best sort of case to put them in, and all that kind of stuff." And if you get 20 people responding to that saying, "I can write your article," most of them have no experience in that field. What they will do is they will go out and they'll go to Wikipedia and they'll go to Google and they'll read a bunch of different articles. But when they can tap into a guy like this who has 20, 30, 40 years of experience in this area and has seen every miracle vitamin that came along, and maybe some that weren't so much of a miracle and some that were, and has the whole perspective of that industry, that person's thoughts are so much more valuable in an article than somebody who's for whom English isn't their first language, which these are worldwide networks. So many people for whom English isn't their first language are working on there. But when somebody is doing articles, for an English language market, they want somebody that has some industry background. They want somebody whose English is perfect. Their idiomatic use of the English language is perfect. And so this is something that is very important to put together. So I appreciate all those nice likes and hearts. Thanks, Tillman, Sharon, GP, John, Kim, Jason, Walt, Joseph. Lots of the list goes off the page here, and I apologize. I can't read everybody, but I appreciate you stopping by on a Saturday and taking a look at that. Yes, Jessica, this is a very interesting comment, because big corporations, in my mind, look for reasons to cut people that are 50 plus in order to cut expenses, because they are more expensive on the company healthcare system. There's a perception that they don't contribute as much, that kind of thing. So they want the quote young aggressive person that's gonna really bring a lot of energy to the job, or that kind of thing. They tend to discount the wisdom component of it, of course. And you know 50 to 100 years from now, we'll look back on this time and see that that's a lot of what was going on. And uh e- exactly. So, and these people often go into consulting for the same company that asked them to retire. And yes, we've had many people come through our programs that's what's happened. But we suggest that you not go back to work as a consultant directly for the company, but you go through a system like Upwork, because Upwork has lots of sort of protections and sort of rules and arbitration and things that keep all that on the up and up. Because what I have seen is some companies hire people back as consultants and still kind of treat them like employees. Some companies do a good job, and some companies not so much. Yeah, well, and thank you, Jessica. It's um, doing this. When I started out 14 years ago, I thought my job was to help people go from not freelancing to freelancing, just learn how to do that. Pretty straightforward. And a few years into it, I realized that this is one of the most important transitions that we make in our lives. This is really the big transition, in the sense of we have to change the way we do things. Our schedules are going to change. The people we work with are going to change. And it really makes sense to figure this out. This is when you get the chance to pick the kind of work you want to do. We've all had jobs that we loved and hated at the same time. And that's what we want to make sure that you pull the things into your freelancing work that you enjoy doing, and you structure it the way that you want to structure it. And that's yeah, though it's the young hot managers with little wisdom that just don't know that there's a reason that you don't do it exactly the way the book says sometimes, because as circumstances vary, it makes sense to do that. And yes, we've all seen this tragedy, kind of in the hedge fund area is the one that comes to mind for me, where they come in with big mathematical models and they really have great insights, and in a short time span, their formula works and it seems to be making good sense. But then, business cycles and all that kind of thing come into play. And it turns out that, yeah, it wasn't really the great idea everybody thought it was. And so let's see. Karen says, as a 60 plus freelancer, I work harder than the 20 somethings because I have to stay competitive. Very true. You find some companies that don't appreciate that work ethic. It's a hurdle to overcome. Yes, that's I know that I moved to California, let's see, when I was about 29 or so. And the first week I was in the office, I noticed that on Friday that everybody went out to lunch like normal, but nobody came back. And it was just kind of an unwritten rule in that first office I worked in that, hey, yeah, we don't work Friday afternoons. We just take off. And it was a remote office, and everybody was in on that. And I felt like I was getting a half a day if I just worked what I was supposed to there. And it was quite the wake up call. And you're right. You can't, like anything else, you can't generalize things to people of a certain age. There are some people that know how to apply the wisdom they have. They know how to get in and work on things. They show that same enthusiasm, and like you say, work harder to stay on top of things. And it is a hurdle, and that's what's great about being your own independent freelancer is you're a peer with that freelance buyer. The freelance buyer has a problem to solve, usually in the form, it could be proofreading, it could be customer service, it could be whatever it is. And you are a business person who is able to solve that problem for them, or represent a part of the solution of that problem for them. So you're on a peer to peer level, which is much nicer than being on a boss employee level. And as you begin freelancing, we suggest people work around with different freelancers. And if you find somebody that gives you any of that negative vibration that we would ever get from a boss, that you terminate your relationship with that freelancer. I mean, you get the chance to build the garden and you get to pull out any weeds you don't want in your garden. And if you get a freelance buyer that's a little bit abrasive or a little bit demanding, beyond what would be considered a normal business relationship, you can just get rid of them. And I can remember a few of those that I had to wait years to get rid of. So that was kind of interesting. Has anybody ever on the line had a boss that was one that you wanted to not work for? So let's see. Yes, I think that's Jessica saying yes. Um, I'm not up on my hand signals, but yeah, this is the worst thing. I remember having in the in the dot-com bomb, one of the other crises we had along the way, and that was very interesting during the dot-com bomb. My boss came in and said, "The good news is you get to keep your job. The bad news is we're firing three-quarters of the people in this division today." And that was uh, uh, that was a rough day. And I went, and they were cutting my compensation in half and all kinds of crazy things. And I thought about it. Went home over the weekend. Didn't want to make a rash decision, but ultimately decided that I didn't want to, uh, you know, uh, well, if I decided that if I was going to work for an idiot, it might as well be myself. And so that's when I first started my freelance career. And I kind of, anytime the press talks about an uh, older person, they say they're still going strong. And I don't like that. What I like is that they're adjusting and adapting to their current circumstances, and more creative than they ever were before. Uh that's what counts. And yes, Jess Jessica says those are my goodbye bad client waves. That's good. Yes, excellent. Okay. Got it. Very good. Yes. Yeah. And here's Maria. Uh, Left a job strictly because of her boss, and that was really the situation I was in. Is I loved that job, and the clients were great, and the managers were great, and the team was great, and but we had a new boss that had no experience in the industry we were in, and he was just terrible. Just life went to. Uh, let's see, what's Jessica called a client, secured a job, and walked when my manager cut my commissions in half and made it retroactive. Oh my God, yes, yeah, that's particularly in sales. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I worked for a number of years for Jay Abraham, the marketing guy, and he used to start his seminars with the definition of a client. And a client meant someone under your protection and care. That was the dictionary definition. And I really like that definition. We use that in some of our trainings for our certified coaches. And that's where the way we view our clients. So something very worthwhile. And I do want to, let me just get the 1 second here. We're having a session in St. Louis, a 2.5 day session where we help people with this. And if that would be of interest to you, here we go. And yeah, and Karen brings up a good point. Most of the bosses either got fired or left, and because their form of management doesn't sustain. Oops, let's see. It didn't want to put the link up there. Let's try that again and see if it does it. Okay. I think that did it that time. So there we go. Okay. Yeah, there's all the details on that link. You just go there. Yeah, Joseph has talks about working as a temp skip tracer. That's the uh, 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 yeah, that would be an example of the kind of job that you could easily do in another country because you're doing it all online. You're looking things up, you're making phone calls online, that kind of thing, and that's obviously very specialized skill. And certainly during the pandemic, we had that contact tracing. Who did you have contact with, and all that kind of stuff. So you guys have been a great audience today. I appreciate all the good questions. Are there any other questions you have that I could answer for you before we sign off? I'm happy to do that. Let me turn myself back into a big square. And okay, and Jessica wants to know what a skip tracer is, and I think that's like if you buy a car and you quit making payments on it, but you've still got the car, and you've moved from where you were when you signed the paperwork. They follow you around and try to find out where you're living now. And of course, that's gotten easier and easier as the internet came along. Used to be people could hide, but we get people that come into our program and want to know if they can hide and avoid taxes and that kind of thing. And the answer is not really. All these systems, all these networks are fully tax compliant. And so that's something that you just, they pay attention to. They report earnings, that kind of thing. And thanks for your kind words there, Karen. Appreciate that. And yeah, so skip tracing involves, from Jason, finding current addresses of people who are supposed to receive, class action lawsuits, settlement checks. That's people want to get that call. So that's good. Yeah, that's very good. All righty. Well, thanks, Jessica. Glad to do it. We'll be back on here again this coming Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll be talking a little bit about our event coming up in St. Louis that helps with all this, and we'll be happy to answer questions then, and appreciate all the good comments. If you've found a little benefit to hear along the way, just appreciate it if you hit that like button on the way out, and that helps this message be spread the way the algorithm works. Facebook will share this with a larger audience, which is always good. And I certainly find, in fact, in the workshops I conduct, that I just conducted for the first time in Las Vegas live in 2 years, I asked the question, when I go through this stuff and explain how these networks work, and of course in that workshop we have 6 hours together, so we cover a lot more stuff and a lot more in depth. And we say, I say, how many people in the world have just seen information about a world they had no idea even existed? And to this day, still 3/4 of the class raised their hand, indicating that they just did not know this was even out there. So that's so yes, Jessica, the times are 5 p.m. Central Time next Wednesday and Thursday. So that's those will be the times for them. All righty. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day wherever you are, whether it's your morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it might be. And we'll see you again next week. Take care. Adios.